So my presentation basically is the way to transformation. Well, you guess the transformation, community housing transformation center, that must be connecting there when I was starting it. But it should have been called building partnership. It makes sense. This is what the future, I think, of this sector is all about. We are in a changing environment. I mean, environment is always evolving and stuff are happening, but in the last few years and for the next coming years, there's something big happening. Most of our organizations have been built in the 70s, 80s, early 90s, and we are all confronting situations such as the coming of the end of the operation agreement, or it's already happened, the new national housing strategy. Provincially, there's different policies that are happening now than they were before. So everything is changing. It's changing at that level, but it's also changing in terms of, I mean, those of you in the room that were in the business 20, 30 years ago and still here, you probably see that your tenants are changing as well. It's not exactly the same profile of people that are in our homes now than they were 20, 30 years ago. So quite often we face people that have a bit more challenges than they had before. So it's not just that transformation is a buzzword for fun, but the reality is that the surrounding environment in which we work is transforming, and if we don't adapt to that, well, we're going to have a number of problems. Bigger is better? Maybe. But when they're telling us bigger is better, it's always a message that says your organization has to be bigger. You have to have more staff, or you have to have more unit, and you have to have a board that is more solid. You have to, I mean, all those things could make sense. I'm not saying the contrary, absolutely not. But when they want to supersize us, I would say, it's always a message to every individual organization. Like if every tree in the forest would grow, that would make the forest biggest. That doesn't make that. It just make a forest of big trees. That brings the question, does size matter? I say yes, size matter, but it doesn't mean that necessarily has to be bigger to be size. I mean, for example, mammoth, and I never managed to say it probably, Rhinognathus. I picked that one because according to Wikipedia, that is the biggest dinosaur that ever existed. Well, they were big, and they're not there anymore. And it's true for animals, but it's also true for other organizations that we could rely on or relay about. Maybe some people in the room remember something called Nortel, the largest capitalization in Canadian history. Not there anymore. Manitoba, maybe a lot of you remember something called the Hudson Bay Corporation, Hudson Bay Company. I mean, that thing bloody owned Canada at one point. Now it's a shopping mall, and the fact that the name survived, but it's not even a Canadian organization anymore. It's not so no, bigger is not necessarily a synonymous of a successful story. And we could go on and on and on, you know. GM had kind of collapsed a couple of times. And so on. So it's important to understand that bigger is not necessarily the answer. Doesn't mean that it's an error, it just doesn't mean it's the answer. What I think needs to be bigger is actually the sector. Well, you can be big and alive also, but you can, you know. The important thing that I'm trying to say is that I'd like us to have a look that is not so much bigger for each of the individual organizations, but make the sector bigger. Make that we answer the need in the society in a bigger way, because the needs is actually growing and the society is growing. So it's not so much the issue of each provider, but the way each providers work together. This is the key element, I think, into going forward. And that goes back to partnership. Now, the other buzzword that goes around after bigger is that we got to implement the best practices. Now, best practices can be understood in two different ways. One way, and I think that's the positive way to understand it, is that best practices means you inspire yourself at what somebody else made and made it successful. And it makes a lot of sense. I mean, one doesn't need to reinvent the wheel every time you have to build a car. But the point is, every organization is in a different circumstance and a different situation. So if you try to do a mechanic approach, say, well, I'm going to take their program, just scratch their name top and put my name on top of it, and then that will become my activity. Well, the odds are that it's not going to be the best activity for you. The point is, if you just repeat again and again and press on the photocopy machine, well, what you're doing is that you're doing something stupid. It's like you're not thinking by yourself as an organization. So the organization has to reflect before taking action about where it goes, and cannot just say, we're going to mechanically redo it. Because, as individual and as organization, we always look for a winning formula. Well, the first real big news of my presentation is that there is no preset winning formula. There's a process that could be a winning process, but there's not a winning formula. Nobody can know before starting the reflection what is the result of that reflection. Otherwise, it shouldn't be called a reflection. It's called a mantra. Say, just repeat it, and you hope it will become true because you've said it enough. Now that this is clear, let's get into owning our future, which is, again, another way to say building partnership, because we don't want to just be shaken by the transformation that is happening in the environment. How can we control what's going to happen to us as an organization, but to us individually but to us as a group, as a movement? Can we do something that we take control? We put our hands on the hand wheel. And for that, it means that we've got to evolve. Now, there's kind of the kingpin of evolution is that guy. I don't know if you can recognize the picture. He's a guy called Charles Darwin. He wrote the book, literally, about evolution. Quite often, history is being called survival of the fittest. And the way survival of the fittest has been understood quite often in our society is, you're big, you're strong, therefore you're fitter, therefore you're going to win. Well, if you look at it, really what he wrote was that fitness refers not to an organism's strength or athletic ability, but rather to its ability to survive and reproduce. So this is the test. He's telling us, are you on the good path or not, if you can reproduce or not. Now, let's look to the facts. 1996, the nonprofit community co-op, public-owned, call it whatever you want, us, the people that are trying to do housing based on the need and the rights of people rather than just on a for-profit basis, we were 7% of the whole market out of 93% of the other. 2016, at the last census, we were down to 3%. So the answer is no, we do not reproduce enough. Now, the real title, the real name of Mr. Darwin's concept was the natural selection. So, and this is how we describe it. Members of the species best suited for the immediate environment. Those are that survive. So, when one is reading something like that, you think, well, the community housing sector should have an advantage. We should have a head start there because we are the community organization. We should fit like no others. We are the community. We are from the community, based on the community, so that should make us the winning player. How come if we're the winning player, we're going downward? How come aren't we reproducing? There's something there that we have to look at and think as organization and as movement. Maybe our CMHC people will recognize the chart. I've stolen it from your website. Many of you have seen it. It's called, CMHC presented as the continuum. It goes from homeless to market own ownership, market house ownership. I don't like the word continuum. I think a continuum is something like, and when we read the text and people that are pushing for the continuum, they're saying, you pick a homeless person in the street, you bring that person a shelter, that person has addiction problem or other kind of problem, they go into a transitional center and then they become, they're being housed in a nonprofit or co-op, and eventually they go and end up buying that monster house somewhere. It might happen, maybe there's a few individuals that we can showcase that have done that, but the reality, we all know that the people that we're dealing with, most of them are not going to end up there. It's okay, it's not judgmental. But I like the picture because it's a way that it's being represented quite often in the sector. But the right way to call it, I would say, is the spectrum. The difference between the continuum and the spectrum is that the spectrum is just showing the different kind of housing that exists on the market. And it's a market thing. It's not just an ideological kind of thing. We're talking business here. We are a big business sector. overall across the country, it's $60 billion worth of assets that we have. So we should be starting thinking in those kind of number. Now, the whole thing is representative of the community. And when you look at the chart, you say, well, the community housing is more or less the first left hand of the graph. And then the for-profit housing is the second half. So we're kind of half the business. It's good, it's nice looking. The reality is that that first half of the spectrum is only 3% of the housing stock. And the second half is being controlled at 97% by another player on the game. So it's half and half, but it's not really half and half. I mean, when you really think about it. Now, that can be explained by many ways. We are in the market, I've said. So there's an issue of who are we selling to and what are we selling to and how do we sell it to. Now, if you look to that market, the income capacity, the people on the further right-hand side of the picture, they are the one with a lot of resources financially, in comparison at least to the people on the left-hand side. The people that we are serving are those that have a lot of needs. So of course, for the private for-profit sector, to be on the right-hand side makes a lot of sense because this is the easiest clientele you can have, and they're the most paying one. They have the resources, so it's normal that they concentrate on that part. Now, we have a tendency to concentrate on the other extreme of the spectrum, but it's very difficult to be on that extreme of the spectrum and to bring up a business case that makes sense and to say, well, you're going to be self-sustainable. Well, if you have clients that have no money, you can be a very good seller, but at the end of the day, ain't gonna buy anything because they don't have any money. I mean, it's not rocket science. So we have to be careful not to make the comparison on the one-to-one basis because it's not the same market. So there need to be different rules on how things are being done because we're not serving the same clientele, we're not dealing in the same market. Overall, it's one big market, but it's being segmented. Now, the other thing that has to be brought to light is that the reality of public support is not flat. When we think, what we hear quite often, like private sector housing doesn't need any support, that's fantastic, and just a bunch of beggars, you're always there asking more money and more resources and anything. Well, let's take a moment to reflect on the actual reality of what's happening in the ground all over Canada. The reality is that this level of public support takes different form, but it's not being spread evenly, and we're not the winner, really. On a per household basis, we're not getting most. The reality is that in Canada, most owners, their first house, they could buy it because they get insurance mortgage provided by CMHC. Without that insurance, they would not have been able to buy. Well, in Canada, that means that CMHC, and I'm not saying that as to blame CMHC or blame the Canadian government, I'm just saying that we need to remember some facts when we are studying a situation. CMHC is up to 1,000 billions. That's many zeros. 1,000 billions dollar of involvement in supporting the mortgage industry in this country. Well, that's a lot of billions. We've been told 55 billion, and in fact, out of that 55 billion, there's 15 billion that is hard cash from CMHC. Everything else is loan guarantee and loan support by CMHC. So it's $15 billion to support our sector, and 1,000 billion to support the private sector. You top that with the extra expenses that comes with the private sector quite often, because what private sector is looking for, and it's okay, it's their business, and I'm not bringing it as something that says it's bad. It's just we need to know the facts. That when they're building, they quite often have a tendency to go into what we call urban sprawling. So that needs more roads. That means, well, if you have more roads, well, someone has to pay for them. And you need to have, for the people who are living there, then they create a pressure for more public transit that are expensive. And then you have to bring pipes for water for those people. And then you have to build a new school, you have to build a new hospital. So all of those things are extra costs that are way more often being generated by private sector development in housing than they are being generated by our own activities in housing. And then there's also a number of tax credits that are coming with the private sector that we're not entitled to. And the biggest one across Canada, that many of us here know and use, is the fact that there's you got a tax credit for your private home. So if you sell your house, whatever the return you get on that house that you bought 30 years ago that you're selling now, it's tax-free. Well, I'm not saying again it's bad. What I'm saying is that this is just that single tax exemption is $10 billion per year across the country. Well, that's a lot of money that's going that way. So when we're being told that we are asking money that else other partner on the sector are not asking, well, one must remember who's really getting money here and who's not getting money. The reality, in fact, is that how it's being presented here is that on the further left-hand side of the picture, yes, there's more money that has been put in, and there's more, and it's okay. And again, I'm just presenting the facts. Is that people who need special support, people who are facing homelessness or high risk of homelessness and have all kinds of need of support, they do get more money to provide that. And then on the other hand, I've just gave the example for the private market ownership. The middle of the chart here is where there's less support. And that has consequences. What's happening across the country is that we're facing a supply deficit. And the supply deficit is here because most of the social housing that have been developed in the community housing and the non-profit housing has been more in that segment in the last 20 years. And of course, a lot of it has been happening, and mostly it has been happening in the private ownership segment. But this, the affordable rental housing sector, the affordable home ownership, the serviceless social housing kind of thing has been left alone in the dark for quite a while, I would say for the last 25 years across this country. And that has consequences. There's no public support, there's been very little. So the consequences that we're facing a supply deficit there, and that supply deficit is creating pressure, is pushing people towards our sector. That's building our waiting list. So that makes so it's a problem there. We have problem coping with the flow of people that are being pushed from the center of the chart to the extreme of the chart. Push people also away from the center, some try their luck in the private market. So at the end of the day, it makes a private market, it increases the demand, so it makes the private market more expensive. And it makes many people sad because they can't face their daily situation and bring all kind of social problems. If we were to have proper supply, well, the consequence is that the pressure would be eased up, and well, price would be better for people who are middle income people and lower income, working people and low income people that have jobs and so on would be facing better financial situation, and people that are in harsh condition, there would be less of them, and that would make the society a nicer place to be. So I think that's generally the goal that we're fighting for. Now, back to our friend, Mr. Darwin. One of the other findings of Mr. Darwin is that productivity increases with diversity. Now, diversity can be understood in many ways again, but the way I think we should be looking at is that us as a sector, could be also as organization, but as a sector, we got to make sure that we expand our thing. Instead of just being in the first half, we got to learn to deal there as well. And our organization, by doing that, will have a stabilizing impact on the market. We will be providing capacity for ourselves as organization, but also we will have a larger impact on the society. We will have a larger impact that will solve the problem, not only of our tenants, but the tenants that shouldn't become our tenants, because we will stabilize the situation and help more people. I'm not saying that we should become 89% of the market. I'm saying that if we can reach that 20% bar, and why am I saying 20%? Well, if you look at 2016, which is the latest data that have been available through the census, there's in Canada right now 1,775,565, that's a mouthful, number of households that are paying too much for their houses. And there's 417,175 of them, not of them, but another bunch of 400,000 that are in overcrowded situation. If you add to that the 600,000 households that are living in our building, so their situation is good, but if you were to kick them out of our building, they would add up to the chart in the two first lines, so we have to take them into consideration. We are today, or actually not today, we would have need in 2016, 2,792,740, I mean, I feel like bingo caller. 2 million and three-quarter households were in need and needed to have support one way or another to have proper housing conditions to reach the goal of CMHC, which is to say every Canadian, every people living in Canada should have a place to call home that is affordable and adequate for themselves, safe. And I totally subscribe to that. I want to say kudos to CMHC. That's a motivating and aspirational goal that is good. But it cannot be only aspirational. We have to learn and to figure out how to make it from aspirational to operational. As an organization, as a movement, this is our road, this is our task. There's been a call out there, and there's a leadership from CMHC that we must applaud, but we can't just rely on them. We got to take action on our own. But we cannot have a goal and a target that is in our rear mirror. I mean, 2016 is already 3 years ago, soon it's going to be 4 years ago. We cannot have a 2016 target to answer a 2030 situation. So we got to make a projection to 2030, and if you do that, and you say, well, we just keep the same circumstances as they are in percent, but we project ourselves in 2030, well, the total need is 3 million and 0.4 households that are going to be in need. So this is what we should be gearing up. That this is what the chart should be looking. If I'm doing another presentation here in 11 years, that's very soon, eh? If you look at the little green dot on the chart, this is what we are now in the sector. We are 14,000 households in Canada at this point. 2030, we will be 18 million households. That means that every year there will be 286 households, new housing unit, and unless you want to make them people homeless. This is a number of houses that is going to be built in Canada. You build one or you build none with the people in this room. This is going to happen with or without us. Now the question is, how many of those are going to be ours if we want to catch up the 20% goal? So it would mean that for the next few years, 214,000 of those units are going to be ours. That's a big target. I don't know how you feel about it. That's a lot of target. In fact, that means that 75% of all new builds in Canada for the next few years are going to be done by us to reach that target. I don't know how you feel about it, but you're saying that the guy now is living in unicorn land. That makes no sense. I mean, there's no way we're going to achieve that kind of goal in the upcoming year. I would agree with you, but I don't think I live in unicorn land. Let's look first on the capacity of the sector. Well, the best way to do that I've been looking at is what have we been doing in this country in the last few decades. So, if we were able to do it, maybe we're still able to do, and so on. So we're not talking Germany, we're not talking Burkina Faso, we're not talking China, we're talking Canada here. People that, most of us were alive at one point or another in that chart, I guess. So from 1970 on average, there was about 20,000 units that were developed by our sector. Out of the total construction boom across the country, that was on average about 100,000 units per year during that period. From 1990 to 2016, we moved from 20,000 per year down to 4,000 per year, coast to coast to coast. At the same time, the number of units that were being built, all kind of units, not only ours, but everyone in Canada was building 180,000. So we were down. And now, what is being on the table with the National Housing Strategy and several of the provincial strategies across the country, if you add up everything that is being committed and promised, and let's take for granted every promise by every politician across this country will actually turn into reality, we would reach 20,000 units across the country per year for the next 10 years. So it means that we went from 20% of the market, of the development market, to 2%, and now we are aiming for 10%. Well, we can't have a goal of 10% and say we're gonna grow the sector faster because it's not enough, obviously. Let's see the people that are in the land of unicorn, what they're telling us, or what are we telling ourselves, and then see if this is unicorn land or if it's reality land. So some people are saying low and middle income tenants will subsidize very low income tenants. Well, probably most of the people that are saying that haven't met many low income tenants and even middle income tenants. This is not possible for simple mathematical reason. You can't ask people that are making $1,000 per year, not per year, sorry, but per month, or even $2,000 or $3,000 per month income, to ask them to subsidize their neighbor that are making $600 or $700 per month income. They're just not able to do it. It's not going to work as a business model, I can tell you. We don't need to rely and support each other. Well, we're back to building partnership. This is the biggest lie, and this is the one that is more of a mind challenge. This is the question. If you think you can do it on your own, each of you as a board and as an organization, well, you might be able to survive as an organization. That I'm not challenging. But if you want to be part of that campaign that says we want to have a home for all in this country, we want to solve the housing crisis, that cannot be done on your own. That can only be done if we leverage each other's capacity, if we help each other, if we build and wave connections and share resources and do things together. Government funding can be phased out without impact on tenants. Some people are saying that. They're not telling you the truth. They live in unicorn land, if they think so. Badly maintained asset can be leveraged both for renovation and development. Well, if you ever met a banker and you explain to him that you have a shitty building and you want money both to renew and build new, well, just make the test once and you'll know the answer. 100% non-profit operation can generate surpluses. Well, read the sentence again. 100% non-profit operation can generate surpluses. I mean, that sentence makes no sense, but it doesn't forbid many people to say it. Read it again. I mean, that one is tiring. Every time I'm meeting people who are saying that, I say, well, think about it. We can catch up our market share mainly by building new. I made the presentation minutes ago, you remember the chart and how many housing units we would need to build. There's no way we're going to do that. There's no way we're going to do that for many reasons, including that because building new is a much more complicated and extremely difficult challenge than buying, actually. Building new is fun, I would say. If you're into a developmental mood, you take your Lego block, you draw a thing, you look at video, and you say, my building is going to be so fantastic. We'll have those nice meeting room, and we'll have passive heating, and we'll have all of those things, and it's going to be fantastic, wonderful. But I'm not challenging that it's fun, but the thing is that the reality between the moment you start having the idea of building something and the moment you actually deliver the unit, you can count up to 10 years. And I'm not joking. 10 years is not something that we haven't seen in the sector. And not only us, it's not just the nonprofit sector. Building is a long and complex and difficult thing, and it's not the easiest way to do development. So, what can we do that is not unicorn land, that could bring us to achieve the point that we're going for, which is having enough houses for everyone in this country? Well, community housing provider will charge rents to cover all their costs, including capital repair. You remember the sentence about shitty, well, not written that way, but badly maintained assets. Well, our business, even if we're dealing with people that have low income, there's no magic. I mean, you've got to pay the utility, you've got to pay the break, you've got to pay the insurance, you've got to pay everything that goes with it. So don't try to save them by undercutting yourself. You're not saving them. You're just putting everyone in trouble because you're going to put at risk your business. You're going to put at risk your proposal. So you've got to figure out a way to make it run properly. Networking, partnering, sharing, and leveraging multiply our capacity. I don't know if anyone here has any experience in computer science or something, but they came with that chart that said every time you add a player to the network, you actually do it's one more player make it twice the capacity of the network. I mean, it's applied in our sector as well, and we've got to learn how to leverage our individual capacity into a larger thing. That doesn't mean that each of us doesn't exist. You've seen my presentation at the beginning. I'm not telling you all to turn into dinosaur. I'm telling you that if we work together, we can leverage our capacity. So you don't have to give up your own identity. You don't have to give up your own goal, but you've got to learn how to work together to reach the global capacity that we are looking for. Government will help tenants by providing them with housing allowance sufficient to cover their rent. Well, it goes with the first line, but it goes with everything. There's no magic there. I mean, if we've got clients that have no capacity to pay for the goods you're selling, you're not going to sell anything and nothing will go anywhere. So we got to still do some advocacy work to make sure that people across the country that have the capacity to take that decision will understand that if they want to solve the housing problem, they're going to make sure that there's enough fuel in the tank to fuel the engine. Sound assets management will allow for leverage. Don't think small. We do think, and even if the leverage is not needed in your specific case, keep thinking the global picture, and you can have an impact that goes beyond your neighborhood, that goes beyond the tenants that you're dealing with. And that is important because a tenant that you're helping that is not your current tenant is not going to be your future tenant. It's not going to be on your waiting list. It's not going to come knocking on your door asking for an apartment. So that makes a real difference. An expansion will be looked at first via acquisition. When you buy a building that has people in it, well, you buy it and the morning after you can collect your first rent check. It doesn't take 10 years, it takes the time to do the transaction. And you don't face a situation where you haven't built exactly what the people are looking for, or you have to get people moving, and you have all those challenges that are related to that. I mean, I've been involved in plenty of development. None of them went according to the plans. None. That doesn't exist. Development that is built in time, on the price, with no problem in the building, that thing doesn't exist. That could be on my list of unicorn. When you're buying an asset that already exists, if you've done properly your due diligence, well, I'm not saying that it will be no problem, but you know what the problems are and you build that way. And you solve a part of the fact that currently we're pushing away people in the middle of my V design. This is where the potential renter are. And we've got to diversify the sector portfolio to also serve middle incomes. You remember the chart? Well, we can't concentrate only on the left part of the chart. We got to drag ourselves in the center of the chart as well to do a more viable business model, but also to stabilize the general market. And public policies will actively support the sector. I mean, you got people in this room, the responsibility to make sure that the elected official, but the community as a whole, understand the value and the impact of your work and say, well, by doing what we're doing, of course, we're helping the people that are living in our apartments, but we are also helping the whole community to be more sustainable, to be more stable, to be more fun to live in, to be more enjoyable. And this is good for everyone. The three key words being diversification, collaboration, and acquisition. If you keep thinking in those terms, we have a great future ahead of us. Now, I'm here as the Executive Director of the Community Housing Transformation Center. The mission statement says that we're here to support the long-term evolution of community housing providers by dispersing funds, supports, and help to increase organizational capacity. So that whole grand plan that I've just presented, we're not going to do it. What we can do is help you do it. We can, and others are playing that role. We're not alone there. It's a big plan. I mean, talking millions of housing units cannot be done by a handful of people. It needs to be a collective effort. Again, partnership, support, sharing, leveraging. So we're part of that. And I must say that's a very exciting situation. For the last 30 years or so, I've been going around begging for money. Now, for my first time of my life, I'm going around saying, well, no, I can give you money. So it's changed the total perspective. It's very, very motivating, I must say. So let's go to see key elements of successful transformation of the sector. This is how we will look at proposal and idea when they're coming forward. And we are having an action at several levels, we covered them. So at the provider's level, basically every one of your individual organization. Well, our role is to help you enhance your governance. Is your board trained enough? Has all the competence and the capacity that should be on your board there? So we're there to help you go that way, and we provide the support in that way. We'll see further on how those things happen. Reduce environmental footprint. Well, the whole chart is very nice, but if we're all cooked somewhere because it's too hot, no point. So we gotta shoulder the effort to say we're gonna try to reduce reduce whatever is happening, so we live in a better place. We gotta develop tenants' engagement and social inclusion. Our buildings are different than privately owned, privately managed organization. We are a community organization, and we gotta have as a value to make sure that the tenants that are in our buildings, I'm not saying you're not doing it, but I'm saying we gotta make sure that we keep doing it, even if we enlarge and raise the scale of our activity. We gotta make sure that they are a living, fun, thriving environment where tenants have a possibility to contribute according to their skills and capacity, but they've got to feel home, not only that they have a house, but they have a home. We got to help with our management, both in terms of technical capacity, but also in terms of training for the individual. So I know many of the organizations that still do their bookkeeping, for example, in a manual ledger. There's many organizations that could improve their capacity at that level and do stuff like that. We're going to increase the financial viability. Your project needs to be done in a way that makes sense, that you're got to have a business model basically that says, yes, there's income coming, there's expenses, and that needs to be balanced not only for short term but for long term. And again, advanced interagencies collaboration. A lot of things can be done without you losing your soul, but by sharing with others. Would it be sharing human resources, sharing bulk buying, sharing all kind of different things that can be done together. So that's coming again and again in my presentation. We do it together, we're much stronger than if we do it alone. We also act to support sector-wide level intervention. So we want to enlarge market share. We've got to broaden the product offered to middle-income households. As a sector, we've been concentrating a lot on the further left part of the spectrum. We need to enlarge that. We've got to diversify the business model. Every organization is not the same, and we got to be able to do things differently, including, again, having different stream of funding if possible for each of the organizations, and certainly for all of the sector. That needs to be different than what we've been doing up to now. We're going to strengthen sector support facilities. I mean, here's a good example. The conference that's happening now, for a long time, was not happening in Manitoba. The sector was not as organized as it is now, and can still be more organized. So the Manitoba Nonprofit Housing Association is an example of things that can be done, and there's other organizations across the country in different provinces that are providing more services than what Manitoba Housing Nonprofit is providing now. And again, advanced interagencies collaboration. So not only for the grassroots organization, but even organization, again, taking the example of the Manitoba Nonprofit Housing Association, can share more experiences and maybe develop some program with other provincial organization or other sectorial organization. Now, those two were inward looking, but we also need to affect the external environment. So we gotta improve access to long-term capital. I mean, at the end of the day, we live in a society where to do something, you need cash. You need energy, goodwill, and vision, but all of that is not enough if you don't have a good checkbook. There will be money, and there should be money, and we've got to work in order to develop funding sources where we can do something, get more money to us. Increase government support for tenants. So you remember several times I said the tenants got to be able to pay their rent. Well, if they are people that are unemployed, the money has got to come somehow and somewhere. But we got to pressure for them, make pressure to get to that point. And we got to have fiscal and financial support for community housing providers. Remember at the beginning I also said, well, there's tons of different kind of support that is being provided to the private sector. So we're not saying that we want to have a privilege thing. We're saying that we want to have an equivalent. We got to have a number of tools in our toolbox that are not available now that we got to pressure the authority for. Where's the center coming from? You probably remember that a few years ago, and we've been introduced to that, the National Housing Strategy came 2 years ago, was unveiled. Before that, there was a 2 or 3 years. I mean, it seems to me very long because there was so many zillions of meetings and discussion and consultation and stuff that were happening. So, and part of those, most of the largest organizations that are representative of the sector and across the country came together and were making, amongst other representation to the Canadian government, the fact that we need to have what we were calling in those days the Technical Resource Center, a unified Technical Resource Center, to make sure that knowledge and capacity from the different parts of the country would be available to everyone. So if then, for one reason or another, in some region of the country, they have a good idea that they implemented, that it was efficient, is there a way to make sure that other part of the country knows about it and they can use that, again, not in a mechanical way, but inspire themselves from what is being done. So we came together, we made a representation. The federal government listened to it and included it in the National Housing Strategy and created that. And CMHC came in and said, well, here's some funding to support the idea of such a center. So this is where we're coming from. Now we do technically 3 things, and that might be the more interesting part for you that is coming now. So we do information, funding, and partnering. So the information part basically is that across the country, as I was saying, many things are happening. In every region, every province, every subsector of the whole sector, every segment of the sector, there is idea, there is tool, there's being resources, there's network, there's toolbooks, there's manuals, there is funding process, there is software that have been developed, there's all kind of things that are being created. So basically what we're busy now, and when we start doing that, we thought that, we do that huge inventory, and when we thought huge, we were saying to ourselves, well, there'd be about 1,000 items in the book that can be there and be looked at. And now that we've started building the inventory, we are saying, well, we will not have finished the job until we have 10,000 units. Because there's so many things that the more we look and the more we learn about what's happening in every part of the country, the more we have to enlarge the list of things that we so there's a massive wealth of knowledge and capacity in this country about community housing. It's just that there's very little connection that allow us, each of us individually, to learn about it and to use and to leverage from it. So again, this is the leverage of partnership thing is there. All that information is being put in the computer. The computer is there, and you can see it as maybe, I don't know, the Amazon or the Kijiji of the housing sector. You go there, and all the information that you can need is there. Now, the platform is nice, both for you as user, but for us also the provider, the service provider that are there. We want to have so much, and we basically sit as a one-stop shopping mall for community housing services. So you need something is there. On top of it, there will be extra services that you don't get at Amazon or Kijiji, or, I mean, some people said it could be also the Tinder of the housing sector. So, a bit dramatic, but the point is that we try to match the service providers and the housing providers together to get the best services. And if you don't find your way yourself in the services, no problem, because you phone the center or you send us an email and we'll connect with you. And we'll help you even define your needs. We're busy developing, and that already exists, but we're one more tool. A tool that you say, when you go to the doctor and say, well, doctor, I don't feel well, and the doctor cannot tell you, what disease do you have? I mean, that's the doctor's job to figure out what the disease you have. So we have developed that tool that is self-assessment tool. So you fill the gap, you answer the question, and it helps you figure out what is not going so well in your organization, what is going well in your organization. So from that, you can figure out what's needed. You go around, you find the resources that are available for you. And the nice thing, the big difference between that service platform and Amazon is that at the end, instead of having a cart that says, well, you've got to pay X thousands of dollars to use it, well, the cart is the other way around. You define your need, you find the proper service provider, and you ask us for money to buy the service that you need to fulfill your need. So it's not totally guaranteed that you'll get 100% of what you need that is being paid for, but still, this is the general idea. So that brings me to the funding part of things. So across the country, there's plenty of people with good idea and that are identifying their needs. And we have the money. So you ask for the money, it goes into your organization, and here, done. You solve, easy, simple. We just go that way. Real easy. I mean, keep it cool. So, sadly, one more zero would have been nicer, but we have $50 million. That's already a starting point, and we convince our friends here at CMHC and elsewhere to help us to grow the pot. So we got $50 million at this point to distribute across the country. This is being spread into two main streams, but one of them is being then sub-split. So there's a $10 million at the bottom that is specifically dedicated to support tenant engagement. So you want to start process, you want to have, change the way your board is functioning. Many of our organizations, for example, have tenants on the boards, but let's be totally frank and honest. Quite often, these tenants don't say much. Just sit there and they're a bit intimidated because all kinds of reasons they can get in, but they don't feel they have all the skill and all the capacity and all the legitimacy to make a solid intervention on the board. It doesn't have to be on the board. There's all kinds of other ways of having an involvement of the tenant through consultation, through participation, through discussion, through outreaching. But basically, we got to make sure that we are good service client oriented. Any business model says you got to make sure that you are answering the need of the people that you're serving. So same thing that goes for us. So there's $10 million specifically to increase that adequacy between what we're doing and what the tenants are looking for and what the tenants need. So to help that. The other $40 million, which is the biggest chunk of the money, is being split in two subsections. The local project, so for every single one of the housing provider across the country, there's a possibility to go there, and we're going to provide you with funding to those local providers. That is to facilitate the emerging model of development. So you haven't been doing any development up to now, and you want to do another building. Well, we help to have you the very, very early starting phase, even before CMHC seeks funding, to start having the idea, discussion at the community level and trying to start your thing, and you want to do something that is a bit different, you can try with us, we'll try to support you. We want to support conservation initiative among existing partners. You realize that across the street or the next neighborhood or the next village, they have a similar organization that is facing similar thing, similar challenges. That doesn't mean that you have to merge. Could go up to merging, but that could be very well be the fact that both organizations have only a part-time janitor to keep the building. It's more difficult to find someone because it's only a part-time job. Can you work together to get one person that work in two buildings? Is there any kind of that kind of leverage thing that can be done? So we can help you figure out something doing that way. Encourage project in region where gaps in community housing services are found. Well, again, is there something that you know another region is doing that is useful and you can inspire yourself to do something similar? But we're talking small scale there, and introduce or enhance indigenous knowledge in our organization, vision, and action. A large part, a disproportionate part of our tenants are or should be indigenous people because of all the historical situation that we've been doing in this country and living in this country. So it's time to straighten the thing and make sure that they have their fair share. And increase the community housing ability and expertise, generally speaking. Now, the sectoral impact gap filling. So those are larger projects that would be regional, provincial, national kind of thing to bring in things. So fund medium to large contribution towards regional and national scale proposal that should strengthen services with long-term transformational benefit to a wide group of providers. Contribute to structural initiative to fill gap in the sector, to reboot process, improving sector-wide resiliency. And finally, well, the tenants initiative I explained quickly already. So to advance knowledge of improved housing option, tenants' rights and responsibility, and that is true also for the private sector. So if something's happening there, there's a way to organize and to represent the private sector. And try, maybe many of our organizations were started mainly in the urban area. They were started by tenants who were not comfortable in the private sector. So if there's tenants that are still in that situation in the private sector and want to start a new community housing initiative, we should be there to help them. And then value and respect indigenous knowledge. Well, improve the financial literacy, this is what I was talking about, and the management capacity related to housing among the tenant, and we're talking, well, at large, but mainly those that are sitting on our boards. The interesting thing for you, I guess, is to know how do you get that money. So it will be based on two different things, the what and the who. So the what is basically the first criteria we're going to use to decide who can get that money is the impact. Is that money going to help you make things really differently than in a sustainable way? If I could take an analogy, imagine that making things differently doesn't mean that you change what you do. What do I mean? You write a lot of letters. If you're writing with a pencil, well, you write a certain number of letters. You say, well, I'm going to buy a computer. I'll be able to write much more letters and send much more of them. You're still writing letters. You just change the tool to do it and make you more efficient. So this is what we mean by saying transformational and change and impact level. Priorities, well, to get the money from CMHC, they had their own priority. I think they make sense, but those are being, you got to improve the management capacity. You must be improving your board capacity. You must have a better asset management strategy. You must improve your financial viability of your organization and so on. So those are the things that make sense. That were, I think, part of the presentation I've made earlier, but we're going to ask a few questions about that. And then the who. Well, it's not going to be quota. There's no carve out for one province or one region or one demographic of the country. But there will be no empty-handed. There's no subsector, there's no segment of the sector that there will be no proposal coming in. So it's true on a regional basis, it's true on the population distribution, and it's true on the type of provider. It's open both for co-op, for nonprofit, for land trust, for whatever that can make the composition of the sector. We're gonna have something that is being spread to ensure that there's that capacity goes and leverage across the spectrum, not only in one specific aspect of it. We call it a system of synergies. We got partner grants and services. So the grants help develop the services are bank finances by the grant. The partner offers services, the gaps in services per partnership that they're in return partnership carry out to carry out grants. So the kind of the wheel is turning, and we think it's going to help. So to summarize it, the transformation is the means to achieve that project that always get pushed back. Many of the idea that will make a difference in your organization, you already have it, but you've been having it around a coffee and saying, well, that would be nice to do this, but you've got more pressing issue. You've got those things that are the daily core of your organization, and you always end up pushing back on the side from the side of your desk to down on the floor because the desk is already overflowing. Well, bring it back. We're going to help you buy that little stool where you can put that extra project there. So that's the kind of thing we'd like to help. A source for inspiration and networking, a gateway to solution, a stepping stone for other funds, because through us, and we're busy already, through us, you can build proposal that will go to CMHC, but there's all other funding sources that we're trying. For example, there's something that the discussion already started. Something that in the last budget there was money, $300 million that were handed over to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities to improve the green aspect of the green renovation of the buildings. So is there a way that through our process you find a way to get money there? There's something that will be presented to you later that can be worked out. A service gap identifier fillers. So if at the sector level we see that there's something that is missing in one region or another of the country, we'll be happy to help trying to fill that gap. A facilitator between sector stakeholder, promoter of services, and what we are not. So don't waste time trying to ask money to us for those things because you're not going to get it. We're not a preparation for government divestment. I mean, we got to learn to be self-sufficient, but that doesn't mean that the government is off the hook. they have a social responsibility, they have a commitment to do. So we got to perform better, but they have to do their share. So don't come to us saying, we'll do that, therefore nobody else will need to be involved. That's not the way it's going to happen. We're not an advocacy group. We have ideas, we have things that go, but we're not going to make representation to the government to say, well, you should change that policy or another. That's going to be, and still your job to be done. Reviewer 1. What is this? I guess most of you at one point or another of your involvement, you've written a grant proposal. And most of the time you kind of, in the old days, we're sticking a stamp on it and sending it. Now you push the submit button. The point is, it goes into that black box, and you don't really know what's happening in the black box. Sometimes there's a vibration. Sometimes it feels it's hot or it's cold. And then eventually, after some time that you're never exactly sure how long the time is going to be, there's a bing! And then there's a printout and says yes or no. And then when the answer is yes, of course, say, well, that's a good black box. Well done, very efficient, good, very happy. And then when the answer is no, who the shit? Come on, tell me, what the hell do they know about us? No. Have they ever done anything, these people? I know my building, I know my tenants, I know what I should be doing, and how dare they say no to me? Well, I'm sure none of you ever thought that. So I don't want to be the person, since I wrote so many of those proposals, I don't want to be the person that takes the decision that says no. So I want to alleviate my shoulder from some burden. I really want you to feel that you can relate to the center. So not only do we want to have some staff that is coming from every section of the country, we want to have that bunch of volunteer reviewers that know their part of the sector. They know their region, or they know the senior housing, or they know the homelessness, and they know the addiction, and they know. And when a proposal is coming that match the knowledge of those reviewers, so the staff, what we will be doing is that we will make sure that the basics are covered. Does it fit the basic requirement to be an eligible proposal? But the value and the quality of the proposal will be looked at by your peers. So those are the peers that are going to be looking at the proposal. And they will sign, of course, a commitment that they're not in conflict of interest, and that they will be a non-disclosing not disclosing of the information contract. But these people who know Manitoba, these people who know senior housing, those people who know whatever the proposal is looking for, they are the one who will have a strong look to the proposal and make their recommendation. So the box is not going to be so black anymore. It's not going to be so confusing about who is taking what decision about what. It's going to be your peer that are going to look at the proposal. So we want that to be a way for you to feel that the process is not being, it's not unfair, and it's correct, and there's some ground knowledge in it. So there's a lot of advantage in that process, I think, in terms of finding the answer, but there's a lot of advantage for the reviewer. I mean, yes, you will be volunteering a few hours, maybe per season, or maybe even per year, depending on how many proposals match your profile. But what that will give you a real advantage is that you're going to be at the front line. You'll know what is happening in the sector, what are the good ideas, what are the creative people in the sector pushing for. You'll be aware of that. You'll have a head start. Even if you have no non-disclosure commitment, it will be disclosed to you, so you can use that information in your brain into building your own capacity for your own organization. So that's a big advantage for you as an individual and as an organization. So I really invite you to register as a volunteer reviewer. So all of that and more is available on our website. So the website sites is very easy to remember, center.support. There's no .ca, there's no .com, there's no .org, there's no .info, no whatever you want. And the real reason actually is that all those things that everyone knows, they were already taken. Center.that thing was already existing, but now there's that new domain name called support, and we thought that it makes sense, it's good in both languages. and it's easy to remember. So center.support, it's easy. You go there, you register to our newsletter, you look to the different information, and it's really evolving. I mean, that the whole center has been set up. I mean, for the first time in my life, for decades, I got that job early July, and I was the first person hired as for the center. And basically, I woke up that morning and said, well, now I've got that new job. So where do I go to work? Well, for the first time in a decade, I stayed home because we didn't have office, we didn't have a phone, we didn't have nothing. There was me. I was a center, which was a bit intimidating, I must say. So everything is still in the building phase. We kind of build the plane as we try to fly it, but it should be happening soon. In fact, it should be happening in 25 days, December 13, 24 days, I think now. December 13 is where the gates are opening. So everything that I've been presenting to you up to now is ideas. It has to be operational by December 13, thanks to the agreement which they may see. So it's happening very quickly, and many things that you will see on the website is, everything that is there is true, but it's evolving. So, so it's not because you read it today that it's going to be there tomorrow, so you should read it every day. But it's worth coming back and registering for the newsletter, where you'll get regular update, and you'll see where the form is, and the form actually, even if you cannot submit the final form because it's not available yet, but next week, probably, or the week after to the latest, we'll make a provisional form available so you can fill it and be ready for December 13th. Now, pay attention, there might be some little difference between the form available now and the real form, but we do that in order to allow you to be ready by December 13th. But so it won't be massive difference between the two forms, but might be some. And we do it also in the same sense of peer information, that if you look at the form that we've developed for you to ask funding, and you say, well, that question doesn't make sense, or it's difficult to understand, or why are you bothering us with that? Send us that information. This is how this is why there will be a difference between the form that we make public now and the actual final one, because we want to use your knowledge and your capacity. You are our clients. You're the people that we need to make sure that you feel comfortable using the resources that are available for you. So that's the feedback loop that we want to have through that.